All right. What's going on here? It's really the JJK final chapter. It's actually happening. The series is over. I don't think there will be a sequel series. The worldwide media phenomenon, in some ways, the most popular series in Jump, thanks to its amazing MAPPA adaptation that brought in scores of new fans, people that never had even really been into Battle Shonen before were into JJK. You saw merch for it everywhere, you saw cosplay for it at every convention. It really was one of the biggest flash in the pan type successes that Jump has ever had, running for 271 chapters and now coming to a close. You could call this somewhat like the Bleach of its era, I want to say, in that it was very stylistic and flashy, and definitely grew a gigantic Western audience. But Bleach ran for 600 and some chapters, and I think I imagine a lot of people assumed JJK too would start pushing those sorts of numbers. It did seem like it was wrapping up, of course. Major characters started dying. Big climactic final battle type fights started unfolding. But I don't think anyone suspected how close the end was when suddenly 5 chapters remaining popped up a couple months ago. And the community responded with, as far as I can tell, a lot of outrage. I think I've talked before about how people sometimes read shonen with sort of a checklist brain, where basically their enjoyment of the series is based on kind of cathartic moments where they see some character return or some fight happen or some power get unleashed. JJK, like Bleach before it, kind of has like a chart you can make where every character has like a domain expansion and every character has their curse technique, and then maybe every character can learn a reversed curse technique or whatever. And I think a large part of the fan population assumed that at some point you would get to fill in at least the vast majority of that sheet. There was a lot of battles that were set up that suddenly they realized might get off screened or just left inconclusively. And yeah, basically, people start getting upset when they realize that their own personal checklist isn't going to get fully checked off. And I've kind of made fun of that mentality before, but I think this is kind of a mode we're encouraged to engage in Shonen, anticipating certain fights, anticipating certain power ups and returns and matchups, and seeing how some things interact with other things. And I too was very, very shocked and kind of sad when I realized that it was wrapping up so quickly. I don't know if this is largely due to the author's ongoing health issues, that the pace and challenge of a weekly series, especially one with such detailed and dynamic arc, really kind of is catching up to him, and it just didn't seem like a viable thing anymore. I don't know if this is an instance of him just kind of wanting to end the series on a high note, realizing that fan expectations are extremely high, that the Mappa anime is killing it, and deciding, okay, I don't actually just want to push this indefinitely. I don't want to make this like a 10-year behemoth. We're just going to call it here and leave on a high note with a good reputation. Just totally valid and understandable. But yeah, I don't know. I think people saw a lot of potential in the series. I think people saw it as one of the new future pillars of Jump. But alongside another kind of modern pillar of Jump, Boku no Hero Academia, it is coming to a close. So what's happened in those last 5 chapters? Nobara came back, which I was certainly looking forward to because I just really love her character. But I think that overall got a very poor reception. Partially kind of like a power level thing where people were confused and upset that she would be able to influence this titanic superpower battle to that extent. Some people thought it wasn't foreshadowed enough and that it felt a little ass pulley. Other people, I think, just were frustrated that it was ending and that other things weren't happening and we were seeing this instead. After that, there was kind of a cathartic, emotional chapter of the ending of Sukuna and his existence. The primary antagonist and really one of the catalysts for most of the major events in the series. I don't know. I found that kind of nice. A little strange. The messaging was certainly a little odd, but it was mostly odd in a way that it was kind of uncharacteristically cliche and straightforward for this series to kind of have this emotional moment of departure with the final villain, you know. And then there was a whole bunch of like wrap up stuff about talking about the inheritors of different curse techniques and domains, and the great houses of sorcery and the internal strife between them, kind of like what is the next step in there. Um, all sorts of like little check-ins with characters, and some of it kind of surprised me in how detailed it was and how thorough, and that kind of felt strangely unnecessary to me when there was so precious little time left. But I've always talked about how JJK kind of operates on a couple levels. Like, you can just be a fan of the characters and the action and just enjoy it as this sort of thrill ride. Or you can really, really care about the politics that unfold behind the scenes and all of the lore that's been built up around this sorcery society, all the mechanics of the different powers, not just how they apply to battles, but how they persist through bloodlines and the relative strengths and weaknesses of them. So I was like, oh, okay. So that's appealing to the latter type of fan. Whereas I'm much the former type of fan, so that's okay. But yeah, overall, I would say this ending is sort of surprising me in how unsurprising it is. I always thought the series was a little subversive, a little edgy. It felt very much like a modern shonen in that extent, where now these sorts of twists and subversions and kind of pulling the rug out of you moments are what we expect from shonen. And yet this ending so far has kind of called back to, I think, a former era of shonen where, things kind of just wrap up quickly, unceremoniously, and just sort of fulfilling as many sort of snipping off cut plot lines and stuff as possible. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little disappointed. I thought maybe something really crazy would happen at the end, and so far it hasn't. The last chapter ended with a sense of, well, our original gang of 3 is back together. And these lovable scamps are going to have themselves some classic exorcism adventures, just like they did at the beginning of the series back in simpler times. And honestly, if the series had just ended at the end of the last chapter, I would have been like, okay, yeah, that's a pretty typical Shonen Jump ending. Their battles continue. Don't worry, they'll still be having fun. So I don't know, this final chapter, what will happen in it? Let's not delay anymore. Let's plunge into it. It was called From Now On. So yes, they're investigating this case. Our trio, in typical JJK fashion, there's almost a crime scene procedural type element to this as we discuss among our detectives, figuring out what's going on. Her boyfriend having this weird face with a curse technique. It's a radius of 50 meters. It's kind of interesting. It feels almost in the mode of JoJo's or like Hunter x Hunter in some situations, in just how much Gege Sensei wants to dive into the details and mechanics of this stuff. I think more just for the sense of having that depth than for any of this stuff actually really mattering. Okay. 50 meters downtown. Yep, that's not really feasible. Lure the perp to a wide open area. It's not as stupid as you. You directly called me an idiot. Okay, Itadori dashes out with the girlfriend. They still won't follow. Everybody's an idiot. Very funny faces. I like a funny face. Couple could take a trip by car. So couldn't really tail each other. Okay, I like this. I like this little teamwork investigation with these sorts of character dynamics, I kind of like the varying degrees of 2 idiots and then relative straight man trio. That's always fun. I like how when they draw Megumi in the little character face speech bubble indicator, that his hair just looks like a sea urchin. Fushiguro and Othello, I want to show that I'm not that dumb. We can use that. 44 condominium. Okay. Okay, okay. Makes sense, makes sense. His face goes back to normal. Just funny faces, a whole theme of this final chapter, I suppose. So now they're up where they can't be seen, or can't be hit by the curse technique, that is. Shady guy. Nobara jumps in, using the hammer, kind of like that dude in the Order in Sakamoto days, whose name eludes me. He does that too, uses the claw grip to slide down buildings. It's pretty sweet. Whoa, and then their faces become crazy. Of course. Now they're in range. And yeah. They might have got stumbled up a bit by that, but Megami takes care of business. Okay. Don't know the guy at all. I'm the one who bought you that bag. He was a customer back when she was a hostess. Gotcha, gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, you're not going to remember all of those. Even if they buy you a bougie bag. I don't know if this is a reference to a particular bag. It's not a Birkin. It's not my beloved catfish bag that I have from Celine. But it looks nice. I don't know. Okay, the death penalty. Don't know how to convey affection, so I ended up blaming the other person. Kusakabe for replacement training. Satoru Gojo hardly matters now. Future and how I want you to face it. If the worst happens, my wish and my dream that you carry on in my absence. If I go out the way I am now, everyone will grow up and surpass me someday. It's a tall order for frickin' Ichigo over here, who, you know, turned out to not really just be some dude, but instead like an animated corpse or fetus or something. But no, he doesn't have 6 eyes and infinite domain and blah 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 or whatever. Maybe it's strong in ways completely different from me. Never been more sure of myself. I'm counting on you, Yuji. Okay, I really like this. One person to forget me and be strong in ways completely different from me. Because the ways in which Gojo is strong is that he is super cheat code level god tier powerful, and he squashes cursed spirits like nothing. But now the big bad cursed spirit is gone, and it seems like we are in a relative era of peace, where, yeah, there's little pranks and thugs and, you know, dudes up to no good with cursed technique. But I don't think we're going to have another inhumane showdown or whatever, inhuman superpower showdown. So what is the way that Yuji can become strong? I think we're, you know, witnessing it right now, that he is able to have compassion for the low-level criminals that are left, that he's able to reach out to them. Not that one thing. I got rid of it. Not dangerous anymore. It's the perfect ward. Oh yeah, so he still lost his fingers. For some reason I feel like chopping off fingers has just been coming up in media all over the place for me. There was like 2 TIFF movies I saw with dramatic reveals of cut off fingers. Okay, so now we are in Cursed Spirit Hell. With some of our big baddies. What's his face that fucked up Nobara? One of the most detestable characters this series has ever produced. Man, watching the season of the anime with people at Anime Club who hadn't been reading the manga, the scene where he gets Nobara, it hits, man. It sucks. Because I knew she doesn't come back. And then she did come back. But she hadn't come back in like 100 chapters. And they didn't know. And I just, like, it hurt. Kind of passageway for the circulation of souls. I think your life was about revenge. About everyone who scorned you as an abomination. Could have chosen how to live. And here we see a little glimpse of Sukuna back in his original time, I suppose, these two paths. To vomit out the curse writhing in my entrails. I was afraid of immolation by my own curse. So next time, maybe I'll change how I live. I'm the only unruly child left. Alright, now we see our gang. Everybody hanging out, the second years. Okay. And then it ends just with the finger. How it all began. Sukuna's finger. Do we see my big boy Toto at all in this chapter? I think so. No, maybe just in the opening spread, I guess. He doesn't show up in any little montage of people or any flashback. Alright, 0 out of 10. No Toto. Yeah, I don't know. It's not like they really left the door open for a sequel, I wouldn't say. Because it's like kind of showing that... The only thing that's kind of outstanding is maybe Kenjaku, since he kind of got it off-screened a little bit, is like... Is he really, like, for real dead? Because that Kenjaku dude is, like, extremely persistent. That's, like, his whole shtick. And then maybe some stuff with Tengen. In terms of, like, big, impactful things. And then there's a million little, smaller story threads that didn't get resolved. And maybe out of my own ignorance, I didn't realize that one of those could become high impact in some sort of sequel series. But really, it does seem like they're deliberately very much just wrapping it up with this. This is it for these characters. And I don't know, yeah, I was hoping for one last big twist, one memorable thing, something grotesque, something crazy. But in the end, I say that as somebody who really enjoyed JJK, but it wasn't my favorite or anything, right? I enjoyed the characters a lot. I enjoyed the characters more than I thought I would. I think that was really my favorite part of the series. But at the same time, I didn't have the emotional attachment to them where I'm like... super happy that they're just happy in the end. Like, I'm happy that they're happy in the end, but I think I would have enjoyed more seeing them get messed with one last time at the end. But I think for the JJK super fans, which definitely fall into a few different camps, there is going to be a camp that just loves these characters with all their heart and wouldn't be happy with anything besides their own happiness. You know, seeing everybody smiling and walking together, or making non-smiling faces, but, you know, walking together into the future. And alongside, you know, this whole chapter is just sort of hearkening back to the early days of the series, and to kind of the life they were supposed to have as sorcerers. You know, just kind of cleaning up bits of trouble and not doing gigantic culling games or bearing witness to a horrible massacre of everyone in Shinjuku. And I think, yeah, there's a certain fan that will just feel very nostalgic about that, and because they're so emotionally invested in the series, this is just the catharsis they need. And then, yeah, there's other camps that their checklist didn't get filled out. They're disappointed. They didn't like some of the concluding plot points. They're disappointed. For me, I would say, yeah, my biggest disappointment is I just wish there was something weird and wild that kind of lived up to this series' reputation for being subversive and disturbing and for kind of catching you off guard and kicking your ass a little bit. But it's fine. I think it's definitely just fine. Okay. Alright, let's look forward to Gege Sensei's next series. I think for his own sake, maybe it should be a monthly series. I think that sort of mode would suit him great, just like Araki Sensei did with JoJo's. I think he's got a lot left in the tank, a lot of ideas. At a certain point, it felt like JJK had kind of narrowed itself down to the sort of category of characters and category of fights that it had to kind of just have that sort of energy and the feel that people associate with JJK. But at the beginning, it kind of leapt in a lot of weird directions, and he really tried out a lot of different stuff. So I feel like he's really got the spirit of a creator, and there's a lot of different directions he could start going. And that's exciting to see. That's what you want to see from a mangaka. An endless enthusiasm and hunger to make something new and to put it out there in the world. That's manga. I love it. Bye-bye.